Hello and welcome to Michael's Minty Music for today. Today we review ABBA's 1980 album Super Trouper. It's good, but it doesn't have a great variety in my opinion. But there are still definitely some good songs here, and this is definitely not a bad album unless you actively dislike the style that they're going for here. This is the track listing, and these are the tracks I added to my playlist. 6 out of 10, 1 over half. This album has an amazing first half, and then gets a little boring. The second side is basically just the same as the first side, like all the songs sound the same, but worse, because they obviously put the better versions on the first side. But it severely decreases the quality of the album as, by the time you get halfway through, you're like, all right, I've heard similar songs all throughout the first side, and side 2 is pretty much the exact same stuff. They only have a few different types of songs, and by the end of the first half, they've blown through most of them, so the rest of the album just sounds the same, but worse. So now, the style they go for is actually pretty decent. The first 5 tracks are all pretty good. So the album as a whole is still good, but it's definitely not great because it really lacks variety. Honestly, I do like this album more than I give it credit for, but it's just really difficult for me to love it because even on the side 1, a lot of the songs sound pretty similar. Like Super Trouper sounds a little bit like Me and I, and The Winner Takes It All sounds a little bit like Andante Andante. It really they really only have like 2 or 3 song types here on the 10 song album, and it's good the first time or two, but after that it just gets old. Now, the singles released before the album were The Winner Takes It All and On and On and On, which I believe were the 2 big hits here. Some of these did end up on their later greatest hits albums. But my favorite song here is definitely On and On and On, which may be one of my favorite ABBA songs overall. It hits the new wave rock style. It hits it very well, and it's full of pop elements, but it's still held up by a sort of backing guitar and percussion. Definitely one of their best songs, and definitely the best song off of this album. Now, I rank this album 5th out of ABBA's 9 albums, so it's right at the halfway mark, 4 albums above it and 4 albums below it. This album is certainly good. Like most of ABBA's albums, it lacks variety, but I would say this is the best of ABBA's sort of one style, one note albums. It generally has the best style. But that's really my personal opinion, because I like the sort of new wave post-disco pop 1980 style better than sort of the mid-disco stuff. But the albums that are above it all have more variety with a similar level of quality. Stuff like Waterloo and Voulez-Vous just have a little bit more variety with a similar quality, in my opinion. While the albums below all have sort of a similar lack of variety, but with a little bit worse quality. So Super Trouper is kind of that middle of the road. It's good, but one note. So unsurprisingly, this album doesn't take my top spot from 1980. That goes to Billy Joel's Glass Houses, which is not only has a lot more variety, but has a harder rock sound that I like. So Glass Houses is definitely better here. And 1980 is a very contested year, and I don't really think that Super Trouper was going to take it for that. Next up is Led Zeppelin's second 1969 album called Led Zeppelin II, a very innovative name. So, stay minty.